floor is yours, Mr. Zedwe.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear my voice. Is my voice clear?
Clear. Good.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wa bihi nasta'inu ala umuri dunya waddin sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin wa ba'du. First of all, I would like to thanks to Halal Institute for inviting me to the very unique training at the moment, because normally we have only participants from one country. Now we have at least 5 or 6 countries, which is I think this is my first time to have sessions with a participant from numerous countries. So thank you so much again for inviting me to share my sessions. I have been invited by Halal Institute, the Halal Institute, since I think 2022 or 2023, speaking in front of numerous scholars and numerous ulama and halal auditors from different countries, from Brazil all the way to Moscow. So again, it is an honor for me to be here now. As requested by organizers, I would like to basically speak for around 1 hour or maybe 40 minutes or so about something that are very general, something that are very basic, but I think that are necessary because despite the fact that the training are mostly on the all halal related skills and informations, but I think this is the session that I'm going to discuss with you are important in the sense that it becomes the kind of foundations or general overview, especially for those who are relatively new to know about Indonesia. I believe that everybody has already know about Indonesia. Where is Indonesia? But I hope what we can discuss today is something that are basic but still necessary for a broader understanding, for a broader comprehensions of to give the training in a context. So for that, I would like to share my slide. I hope it's not too different from Zoom, because normally, hold on, it's normally via Zoom. Oh no, I cannot share. Just 1 second. I cannot share screen. Hold on.
Yeah.
I need to give you permission.
Hold on a second. I think there is some settings that I have to change within my Mac. Okay. Or if it's possible, maybe Pak Sa'duddin, do you have my slide or not?
Yeah, I have.
Or yeah, I think that's maybe easier for me, no? To
Okay.
use I can say next and when I need it. Because otherwise
Okay.
I have to go to the setting, say that I have to grant permissions, open.
Hold on. No.
Or do I need to
Okay.
share the new one, or you have already?
I have. But if you want to add some,
I can add within the discussions, but I think it's still basically the same from the November one. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Can you see?
Yeah, I can see. I hope everyone also can see the slide. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yes, clear.
okay, so basically, as I said, I would like to share with you a very general overview about Indonesian history, about the relationship between Islam and Indonesia, in order for everyone to really understand why halal and others religious matters are very important in the context of Indonesia. That is basically the objective. So to start to do that, let's start with something that are very basic, with the names. Yeah, maybe everybody has already know that Indonesia is now a name for a nation state, but actually this name was something that are very new even for Indonesians. For ages, for centuries, Indonesia never used Indonesia for themselves, because the name of Indonesia is only exists in the lexicons or in the as a terminology within academia, as around 19th centuries, around 1850s, by British ethnologists, names of Winslow George Errol, but then it's popularized by Adolf Bastian. So before that, what is the name that's normally people in the nearby area or in the regions call themselves or call us? Well, normally we call it as Nusantara. So Nusantara literally means islands among sea, because as you can see from our map, actually Indonesia is the largest archipelagic country, the largest archipelago country, where we basically live scattered in between Indian Oceans and Pacific. So we are basically occupying a let's say very wide area of the seas, separated across islands. That's why we call it Nusantara. And because the natures of our the nature of our geography, actually almost in every nations, in every island, actually you can see the differences. Even within island, you can see the differences, that this difference is actually rooted in different cultures and in different historicity among the populations. I don't see the screen anymore. Is the screen still on or not?
A little bit problem.
Okay. So the reason we also need to really understand about Indonesia, at least in the beginning, is actually because there are reason where we see that now actually, if you talk about Islam, if you talk about Islam in the modern period, like today, we have to really think about Islam as as an ummah, as a let's say as a religion that tied all believers across the globe, everywhere. But we have also to keep in mind that since, of course, colonialism, since post-colonialism, Islam was actually now separated by what we call nation state. And because of that, despite the fact that Islam has universal ethical values that tied all together as Muslims everywhere, since colonialism, Islam has to face a reality that actually Islam must be separated into different, let's say, different nations and different states. And because of that, we have to really know what kind of Indonesian Islam. I put it in the quotation mark, because some say there are no Indonesian Islam. Islam is Islam everywhere. But I would say that the fact that Islam has been, spread out throughout the globe, to Africa, to Middle East, to Indonesia, then Islam also has to adapt with these localities. So if you see this map, for example, even in Indonesia, you cannot really pinpoint where is Indonesia is, because Indonesia is, as you can see from the map, is a state that are comprised of numerous ethnicities. Can you imagine that in Indonesia we have 17,000 islands that are basically spanning across what we call Sabang. Sabang is the very western part of Indonesia in the island of Sumatra in Aceh province. If you want to know about Aceh, well, it's famous for Sharia Islam, special regions, tsunami back then, in 2024, and then all the way to Papua in the very eastern part of Indonesia that is in border with Papua New Guinea or PNG. So from Sabang all the way to Papua, which is equal to Iceland to Azerbaijan. So if you crop Indonesian's archipelago and you put it somewhere in Europe, it is like Iceland to Azerbaijan. The map on the globe, though, is deceiving because the map is very biased. All the islands that are sitting in the equator are seen smaller than the actual, geographical size. Yeah, islands or countries that are far away, further to the north or further to the south, seem bigger for some reasons. Yeah. But Indonesia is quite big. It's around 5,245 kilometers with around 17,000 islands. And as a matter of fact, we gained independence from the Dutch in 1945, although the Dutch initially recognized Indonesian independence in 1949 for years. But now, finally, the Dutch also recognized Indonesian independence in 1945 instead of 48. Well, the reason why the Dutch insist to recognize Indonesian independence in 1948, it's because of related to the to many things, including to the atrocities and the violations of human rights that took place during the revolutions of Indonesian independence at the time. So in Indonesia, we have around 500 ethnic groups according to the national census, and around 700 languages and dialects. So it is languages and dialect. In Java only, for example, you have at least 3 major languages or 4 major languages, and you have numerous sub-languages. In Sulawesi, in Borneo, in Sumatra, you have also 100 of languages among ethnic groups. Yeah. But nevertheless, despite the fact that we have around 700 languages and dialects, every Indonesian must be speaking one national language that we call Bahasa Indonesia. So Bahasa Indonesia is a national language. To give you a real perspective is that when I was born in West Java, in the western part of Java. So for those who are West Javan like me, I called myself as a Sundanese. It's not Sudanese, Sundanese. Sunda is a tribe, like Sundaland, it's a tribe in West Java. And we speak Sundanese. So when I was basically, we speak first with my family. I spoke with my family with Sundanese. Then when we go to school or when we see or watch televisions, then we start to learn also Bahasa at the same time. I think almost all Indonesians who was born mostly in the rural area, not in the capital. Yeah, if you are in capital Jakarta, everybody speak Bahasa Indonesia. But if you are born somewhere in Borneo or in other island, most probably you have to speak your mother tongue languages, and then you learn Bahasa, and then you learn other language like English, like Arabic. Of course, Arabic is important for Indonesian because we have to learn Quran. We have to pray in Arabic as well. So that is the unique thing about Indonesian's languages. So the other thing that I think it's very important to understand is that this Bahasa Indonesia is actually originated from islands that are nearby of Singapore at the moment, the island of Riau. And if you see the circle, red circle, that is the original place when the Bahasa Indonesia were originated. Bahasa Indonesia rooted in Malay. So Malay is also the language that are now become the foundation for Malaysia, for Brunei, for certain part of Philippines and certain part of Thailand. So Indonesia, the Philippines, some part of the Philippines, some part of Thailand, Malaysia, Brunei, and Singapore actually speaking almost the same language. So 90% of us will understand each other if we are going to Brunei or to Malaysia or to Singapore if they are speaking Malay. But that's actually originated from this very small regions in Sumatra called Riau, around Riau area. And what are also interesting in Indonesia as a matter of fact is that out of this diversity of ethnicity and languages and cultures, we have also very diverse religious denominations and religious religions and beliefs. Indonesia has 6 official religions. Why we call it 6 official religion? Why? Because these religions are considered as the official religion of the state. Yeah, these 6 religions, including, of course, Islam, and then we have Catholicism, we have Protestantism, we have Buddhism, we have Hinduism, and we have also Confucianisms among the so-called official religions. But we have also around 200 local religions. What are the local religions? Basically, this is religion that are some call it animist, but some call it no. This is simply a religion that are not part of these 6 religions. Like, for example, in my area, in my province, in West Java, some of us are still following what we call Sunda Wiwitan religions, or the ancient Sundanese religions among the populations. But the numbers is of course is now considered as minority groups. Maybe all in all, the followers of these 200 local region are around 2 to 3 million followers. Still big numbers, but compared to 280 millions in Indonesian population, that is considered small. Yeah. And then, of course, everybody know that Indonesia is 4th most populous countries in the world, after China, India, Brazil, United States, and then Indonesia is number 4. And what is also important to understand, but I believe everybody already know, that Indonesia is the biggest Muslim country at the moment, around one of the biggest, maybe if not overtaken by India or Pakistan, is around 243 million. Next, please. So next slide, please. So this is kind of, the overview, the very general overview, like zoom out. Now I want to invite everyone to zoom in a little bit to the data, as I have mentioned that Indonesia has diversities, very diverse populations, and very diverse, ethnic, religious ethnic, diversity. So Indonesia, as I said, is majority Muslim, around 87% Muslim. The data is debatable. Some say it's 85, some say that it is 90% Muslim, but the average, I think median statistics say that it's around 87% Muslim. Why there are debate? Well, because of the policy of the government initially that are not giving the freedom for these 200 local religions. These 200 local religions used to be forced to follow 1 out of 6. So if you do not have religions, official religion, you have to submit to 1 out of 6. Yeah, you cannot have religions outside of these 6 official religions. Used to be like that, but now the policy changed. These local religions are having much more freedom to follow their own religion. That's why the statistics are debated among scholars. But again, out of 87% population of Muslim, we actually can also divided these Muslims follower into what we call mass organizations or Muslim organization. In Indonesia, we have at least 3 or 4 biggest Muslim organizations. Of course, the biggest one is Nahdlatul Ulama. Nahdlatul Ulama is the biggest Muslim organizations, and the second one was or is Muhammadiyah. Yeah, Muhammadiyah is around have around 60 million followers, and then of course there are smallers like Persatuan Umat Islam, Persis, Nahdlatul Watol, Anwar, and others. I don't think you need to know about this, but most probably you have to know about NUN Muhammadiyah. NUN Muhammadiyah is probably the biggest Muslim organizations on planet with around 100 million followers, but yet it's not relatively known outside of Indonesia. Nahdlatul Ulama is normally seen as the representative of the traditionalist Muslim, while Muhammadiyah normally are seen as the representative of the modernist Muslim. Of course, the differentiation is very is a simplifications and somehow trivial, but it's just for the sake of basic understanding. The followers of Muslim traditionalists are normally under Nahdlatul Ulama, and the follower of the so-called modern Muslim are normally follow what we call Muhammadiyah. Yeah. Nahdlatul Ulama was established around in 1927, and Muhammadiyah was established in 1912. So both of them was established before Indonesian independence, because Indonesian independence was in 1945, while both of them are established before even 1930s at the time. And also other organizations are not normally established long before Indonesian independence. Now I want to again zoom in again to the next slide. So let's take an example of one Muslim organizations that are very big in Indonesia. Next slide, please. Hello. Yeah, let's zoom into one. No, the Muhammadiyah. Yeah, no. Before. Yes, thank you. So let's zoom into one organization in particular here as an example. I just take an example of Muhammadiyah because the data is available publicly. While Nahdlatul Ulama, it's very difficult to get the data publicly, while Muhammadiyah has the data that are actually published almost every year about what we call Muhammadiyah in numbers. Muhammadiyah, as I said, is one of the biggest Muslim organizations that normally seen as a modernist Muslim organizations in Indonesia. Muhammadiyah only actually manage around 457 hospitals. This data is from 5 years ago. Probably if the data is updated, I believe the data is more than this, more than 457 hospitals. And you can see by yourself, they also manage around 176 universities and colleges, and they also has microfinance, institutions, mosques, Baitul Mal wa Tamlil, and then schools, of course, whether it is boarding school or primary schools, and also they have orphanage house. This actually show to you that this Muslim organization is actually not only historical, but also politically significant, because they manage the society almost like state managing their society. NUN Muhammadiyah has its own branches all the way down to village level. So if you have a structure of political structures of the state from village levels all the way to state, actually NUN Muhammadiyah also has a very similar structure in which in every villages, they will have their own representative, they will manage their own school, they will manage their own hospital, for example. So the structure is exactly like the state. Even within Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama board of organizations and the structure of organization, normally they are like shadowing the state in the sense that they will have board that are managing health, that they will have board that are managing education, that are even now they have let's say branch within their organization that manage business and mining, for example, just to give you the most recent example. Next slide, please. So but then the questions that beg our mind is that how could a country that are very far away from the Middle East now become one of the biggest Muslim, become the place for the biggest Muslim communities or Muslim Ummah or Muslim people, and the place for very thriving Muslim organizations like NU and Muhammadiyah, as I have mentioned, right? As we discussed. Well, of course, to answer that, we have to go back to to the history. If you see the map here, actually, if you see on the Indonesian archipelago here down in the corner, on the right corner from my side, you actually, if you draw a line from Aceh, from the very western part of island of Indonesia, we call it Aceh province. We draw the line, then the line will go all actually directly go to Middle East, which is to Sana'a, to Yemen, to Hadramaut. Okay, so there are actually this area from Aceh all the way to India, all the way to the Middle East. We call it the Indian Oceans. These Indian Oceans become its subculture historically, because these Indian Oceans were or still are very important for shipping, of course, for trading. As everybody probably know that since I think maybe ancient period, the shipping line that connect East Asia, like China, like Japan, like Vietnam, with the Middle East and Europe, they will and they must go through Indonesian archipelago, which is go to Malacca Strait. So they will have to go down from China and India, from China and Japan, all the way down to Malacca or to Indonesian archipelago, and then going up again to normally to they will stop somewhere in India, and then from India they will go all the way to the west, to the Indian to Africa, or to, of course, Arabian Peninsula. Yeah, of course, at the time Suez Canal is not yet developed, so the travel route from Europe have to go to Africa. They had to go to Africa, but after the Suez Canal was open, of course, the trip from Europe to Asia were much faster. Yeah, so this explained to us why Islam actually spread out to Indonesia. So Islam spread out to Indonesia almost 100% through two ways. The first one, trading. The second one was actually Sufi order. So that explained to us that the Islamizations in Indonesia was never took place via military means or via conquered, yeah, like other area in Central Asia, for example, or in Africa or in Europe, in which Islam was brought by military expeditions. Islam was brought to Indonesian archipelago through trading, in which traders from Arabia, traders from Yemen, traders from Africa, go all the way to the east to find spices, because that are the original place of spices. And what are also interesting, actually, for ages, Indonesian archipelago was called by both the Arabian traders and the European explorers as East India instead of Nusantara, yeah, instead of Indonesia. So they don't at the time they didn't use Indonesia or Nusantara. The European or Arabian traders call the archipelago in Indonesia as East India, because they thought that this archipelago was still part of India in the eastern part of India, and that's why they call it East India. The so-called trading route actually exists long before long before So the trading route actually had exists long before Islam was introduced by Prophet Muhammad (alaihi salam) in Arabia. Why? Because the trading route has exists since ages. Yeah, trader from China will bring silk, and then they will stop in the Indonesian archipelago to buy some spices, and the spices will be shipped all the way to the west, whether either to India or to Arabia or to Africa. And this caravan then will transport all these trading goods from Yemen all the way up to Byzantine, and normally they will stop somewhere in Mecca, because Mecca has abundant water resources, as we know, Zamzam. So some Mufassir, for example, say that in Quran there are words that are not not originally from Arabic word. The word kafur, for example, in Surat Surat Al-Insan, innal abrara yashrabuna min ka'sin kana mizazuha kafuro. Kafur is not an Arabic word, and kafur, in fact, it's Malay, because it is kafur. It is a very lucrative spices that are normally found only in Kapur, in area in Barus in Sumatra at the time. So this is just a small example how the connections between Indonesian archipelago and the Middle East actually took place. So the Islamizations of Indonesia, before I move to the next slide, the Islamizations of Indonesia, or the so-called East India or Nusantara, was actually took place between 11th century all the way to 15th to 16th century. Some say it might much earlier. Some say the predominant academic evidence show that actually the Islamization took place around 11th century, with the finding of of the burials of Fatimah binti Maimun, which is 11th century of Hijrah, of the Masih, which is around 5th or 6th century of Hijrah. And some say that the Islam that came to Indonesia actually came directly from Hadramaut. Some say that Islam came to Indonesia through India. Some say that Islam came to Indonesia through China. So there are numerous historical evidence saying that Islam came to Indonesia actually through numerous channels. It's not coming from one one area. It's rather came from different part of the regions, whether India, whether China, whether directly from Yemen. But the spike of Islamizations actually took place around 11 and 12, historically connected to the Mongol invasions. As everybody know, around 11, 12, 13, the Mongol invaded almost all Central Asia, all the way to Baghdad, all the way to Syria, and because of that area that's normally used as a route for caravan connecting East Asia all the way Middle East, are disrupted by this conflict and invasions of the Mongol, and because of that, more and more traders now took sea route that were safer for them to take for trading, because the normal route that's normally they take between China and Central Asia and Middle East now are at the time was in a conflict situation because of the Mongol invasions. That's why Islamization in Indonesia actually the peak of Islamization was happened around 11, 12, 13th century of the Common Era. Next. Yeah, so this is basically the summary of the, let's say, Indonesian history. If we study about Indonesian history, normally we will divide the Indonesian history into what we call pre-colonial period, colonial period, and independence movement. Pre-colonial period, of course, a period in which mostly the archipelago are under Hindu and Buddhist influence since 5th all the way to 16th century. So the Hindu Buddhist is gradually losing the grips in the archipelago starting in around 14th century. So basically from 5th all the way to 11, Hindu Buddhists are predominant. That's why if you come to Indonesia, you can still see the legacy of these Hindu Buddhist civilizations. The picture that I show you in the top left corner is the picture of Borobudur Temple. Borobudur Temple is the biggest Buddhist temple. So the biggest Buddhist temple is not located somewhere in Thailand or in Vietnam or in Cambodia. It's actually located in Java, in central Java, in Yogyakarta. So this Buddhist temple was built during the 7th and 8th century for around 200 years. They built it around 200-year project. It was completed around 8th century of the Common Era, and it was built by Sailendra dynasty at the time. Yeah, so this is very ancient. And it still exists today. It's become one of the most visited site in Central Java for international visitors. They normally, if you go to Java, this is must see place. And if you go to Borobudur, actually the Borobudur is now surrounded by mosques, so you can clearly see mosque everywhere near the temple. The temple is still used for religious purposes sometimes by Buddhist community. As I said, during the pre-colonial period, the Hindu-Buddhist civilizations gradually replaced by Muslim civilizations around 11 all the way to 15 and 16th centuries. I think by 16th centuries, the so-called Islamization is almost completed, in which all islands and almost all majority of Muslim are become Muslim. The Islamization took place through, as I said, trading, marriage, intermarriage, trading, and also importantly, Sufi order, through Sufi order. By around 16th century, as we know, the colonial power are looking for lucrative source of spices, and they were following the Arab merchant to find where these Arab merchant actually got the very lucrative product of spices like nutmeg, like clove, like quina and others. So the Portuguese actually was the one who managed to came directly to the source of the spice. The Portuguese came to Spicy Island. The Spicy Island is the island next to Sulawesi near the Papua. As early as 16th century, they came by themselves because actually they were somehow assisted by Muslim navigators. At the time, we have to remember that the Granada and the Andalus has just been reconquered by the Christian emperor of Ferdinand and Isabel. And because of that, at the time, also the Spaniard or the Spanish want to reach the Spicy Island. But instead of going to the east, following the Portuguese, they want to try to find a new way of reaching out to the Spicy Island. And we know from the history that Columbus was asked, to head or to coordinate these explorations, and Columbus navigate to the west, and they found the so-called found they reached maybe they ended up in America, and they thought they are actually reaching India or reaching to the East Indies. They thought that they are reaching Spicy Island. So that's why when they saw the local populations, they call it the Indians. The reason why they call the local population in the US as Indian is because they thought they are rich Indian, East India, which is the Spicy Island, the source of the Spicy Island, which at that time become very, as I said, very lucrative commodities during the colonial period. And of course, after that, we know the Dutch came, the British came, all European power except I think French and stopped in Vietnam. So we basically had the Portuguese, Dutch, and British colonizations started from 16th century all the way to 19th centuries. Decolonization started as a trading merchants and trading partnership, but by around 18th and 19th centuries, this trading partnership actually ended, and now they are become very violent colonialists, in which they want to appropriate Indonesian archipelago as part of their empire. And they actually extracted all resources, and they, as everybody know, they brought all these resources to Europe, and Europe become prosperous because of these colonizations. By late 18th, 19th centuries, the independent movement started to build up, by, for example, the declarations of the so-called the Sumpah Pemuda, or the oath of the youth, because at the time the youth coming from different archipelago and different islands now are some of them are actually now studied in Java Island. So for Indonesia, Java is very important. It's a small island, but it is very central because it's one of the most populous island at the moment, I think, in the world. The reason for Java is very fertile. The soil is very, very good, and it's very strategic. So it's right in the middle. So all the youth coming from Indonesian archipelago at the time started to build their nationalist, identity. They tried to build these nationalisms around 1928, 1920, and it was finally manifested in Indonesian independent Declaration of Indonesian Independence in 1945, as I said. But after 1945, the Dutch actually sent military operations to Indonesia, to Java, and it ended up being one of the most bloodiest period of Indonesian revolutions from 1945 all the way to 1948. That was the very, one of the bloodiest Indonesian revolution period, all the way to 1948. Next slide, please. So, having said that, Indonesian history are basically the accumulations of what we call pre-colonial period, in which we have Hindu, Buddhist, and Islamic traditions, and then we have colonial period and then independent period. That actually can be seen from the way Indonesian's law or Indonesian legal system exist today, or exist today. Yeah. So if you go to Indonesian's legal systems or within Indonesian's policy, for example, you will see there are layers of what we call legal cultures. What is the layers of legal culture? Well, basically all legal system in Indonesia, all legal culture that exists today in Indonesia is a mix, and it's combinations between what we call the customary Hindu Buddhist traditions that mix all together, blended together into the local culture. Now we call it in Indonesian language called adat. Adat is actually coming from Arabic term adat, al-adatul muhakkamatu, for example. But adat in Indonesian language refers to what we call customary law that are rooted in the so-called Hindu, Buddhist, and local religions. But above that, we have what we call Islamic elements or Islamic layers or Islamic legal cultures on top of the so-called adat cultures. Yeah. The Islamic element are predominantly Sufi-oriented Sunni Shafi'i, jurisprudence that came to Indonesia, as I said, through trading and Sufi orders. So these elements are very important because this element is actually not completely erase the so-called adat or Hindu Buddhist, but rather blend it all together. Some say that this is syncretic. Some say this is actually creative engagement of Islam with local cultures. I give you one example, for example. In one area of Indonesia, in Central Java, until today, every Eid al-Adha, every slaughtering day, they do not slaughter cow, but instead they slaughter water buffalo. The reason they don't slaughter cow is because they want to respect Hindu communities that at that time still exist. So they instead use water buffalo for Eid al-Adha to be slaughtered during the Eid al-Adha, because water buffalo will not insult Hindu community at the time. Just to give you an example. And of course, the third layers, the third element are what we call Western Christian traditions that came to Indonesia through colonialisms. And this can be seen in the postures and legal system of Indonesia as a nation state, because now actually Indonesia inherited Dutch legal system. Dutch legal system, of course, is part of Judeo-Christian legal traditions. For almost 70 years, Indonesian legal system are still very much influenced by the Dutch. Only 2-3 years ago, Indonesian's criminal law, for example, enacted by the parliament. Before 2022, Indonesian legal system, like Indonesian criminal law, are still very much the legal system or the criminal law that was introduced by the Dutch back then in 1930s and 1940s. So this is very important to understand. But out of this all, let's say, blending influence cultures and layers and element of legal cultures, Indonesia actually created something that tried to combine, try to navigate all these differences into one single coherent so-called philosophy of state. So Indonesia, if you see the pictures of the bird, that is the symbol of Indonesian state. We call it Pancasila. Yeah, we call it Pancasila. What is Pancasila? Pancasila, as I said, is basically Pancasila is a symbol of the state. And what are interesting is that Pancasila is not only a symbol of state, but it's also actually manifestations of this dynamic, manifestations of this convergence of this customary Islamic and Western influence. Pancha mean 5, sila mean principle. So if you see the symbol within the bird, you have this buffalo head, you have this banyan tree, you have star, you have rice and cotton, you have change, all these representing one principle. So the first principle within Pancasila, we call it as belief in one God. Believe in one and the only God, which mean what? Which mean that actually this is coming from Islamic theology. It came from the principle of Tawheed. Yeah. The second principle, just and civilized humanity, or the principle of humanisms. The third one is the principle of nationalism, the unity of Indonesia. The fourth principle is democracy guided by the inner wisdoms of deliberations among representations, or it basically the principle of deliberation and democracy. And the fifth principle is social justice. So if you see all these principles, these all principles actually combinations of Islamic ideology, capitalism's liberal ideology from the West, communisms, and some local and religious cultures. And if you see one word that is held by the bird, it's called Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Bhinneka Tunggal Ika means unity in diversity. This unity in diversity is very important for Indonesians, for Indonesian nations, because that is the sole philosophical outlook or philosophical principles of Indonesia as a nation. So Indonesia has a symbol of Pancasila and have a slogan Bhinneka Tunggal Ika that represent all this long historicity, this diversity, this numerous influence and ideology that came to Indonesia through colonialism, to trade, to Sufi order, and through natural or just historical processes. Next slide. Yeah. So because of that, because of these, as I said, layers of cultures, the uniqueness and the effort to navigate all of this by creating the so-called philosophy of Indonesia in Pancasila or 5 principles, Indonesia actually faced a very challenging situation, because when Indonesia gained independence in 1945, the founding fathers of Indonesia like Sukarno, like Bung Hatta and others, Syahrir and Hashim Ash'ari and others, actually faced with the dilemma: what legal system that are going to be the foundations of Indonesia as a state? Whether they wanted to adopt Dutch legal system. They had these options because Dutch is their colonizers. Why you should take a law that came through forced colonialisms? So they had these options, and because of that, no, we don't need to take the Dutch legal system. That is the first deliberations. And if we don't want to take a Dutch legal system, so what are the options? Islamic law. Initially, they want to take Islamic law, or Islam as and Sharia as the foundations within the constitutions. But then this is also become the deadlock. Because why? Because at that time, some part of eastern part of Indonesia, who are until today mostly are predominantly Christian, actually threatened to withdraw themselves from the republic. So they want to be an independent state if Sharia and Quran are stated clearly in the Indonesian constitutions. And they don't want to also they don't want also to take a customary legal system like from certain culture, because it will create a problem for other ethnicity. So because of these complications, as I said, finally Indonesia tried to create their own constitutions by mixing all together with the Pancasila as the sole foundations, and Indonesian 1945 constitution as the initial foundation of Indonesian independence. Some legal elements are unavoidably we cannot escape that some element of Dutch legal system are still adopted, especially in the commercial law at the time, in the criminal law, and even in the private law, but it's gradually replaced. But what are really important is actually this diversity should be managed by somehow adopting and recognizing some of them to be exist within Indonesian's state. And because of that, actually, Indonesia is among a few nations that adopt what they call legal pluralism. So what is legal pluralism? Legal pluralism basically a situation in which two or more legal systems coexist in the same social field. So in Indonesia, as I said, now we still have Islamic court. Yeah, we have religious court. We have Islamic court that have or has very limited jurisdictions. The jurisdiction for Islamic court, for example, are limited only for Muslims, for family affairs, and Islamic related businesses and commerce. So, and because of that, in Indonesia, actually, Islamic court are considered the busiest court instead of general court, because, as I said, Indonesia are predominantly Muslim. Sorry, guys. And the jurisdictions are mostly for marriage, inheritance, will, gift, endowment, and it is predominantly based on the Shafi'i jurisprudence. Yeah, so Indonesia is mostly our Shafi'i jurisprudence for the fiqh. Next slide, please. I think I have to stop in after this slide. Okay. Based on the experience, participant also asked about the Indonesian Islamic education system. So for the Indonesian education, just like in the legal system, we adopt what we call dual parallel system, in which we have Islamic educations from elementary all the way to the university. We have around 33 or 37,000 Islamic boarding school, but also at the same time, we have what we call secular educations from elementary all the way to the university. Yeah. In Indonesia, now we have around 4,000 university, both Islamic and non-Islamic or secular. So both of them are managed under different ministries. Islamic education are managed under the Ministry of Religious Affairs, while the secular education are managed under Ministry of Education. Yeah. But interestingly, actually, for both for student at both system, they can cross one to each other at every level. So, for example, I did my elementary school at the Madrasatul Ibtidai, but then I want to go to secular education when I go for junior high school. It is possible to cross, from Islamic education to Islamic to the secular education. Basically, this is similar to legal system. We have dual parallel system. One is Islamic court, one is general court. So to summarize, sorry, sorry, I have some cold, Sorry, to summarize, basically, if you see my presentations from, let's say, from the historical aspect all the way to a legal aspect and to the educational aspect, Indonesia is, in my opinion, are considered as a state in which they declare themselves as a secular country, but nevertheless, religion are very much important, one of the most important element within the state. And because of that, states are involved in numerous religious affairs. That's why we have religious affairs in Indonesia. And almost all religious aspects in Indonesia are managed by the government, despite the fact that Indonesia is a secular country. From Hajj, to schools, to court, to halal, to tourism, everything is managed by state. It is unlikely different from other country in which a lot of religious elements are given to the society or to the private entity to be managed. In Indonesia, everything that are related to religion also managed heavily by the government. Yet Indonesia are considered themselves as a secular country. And because of that, normally we see Indonesia as a model in which religions and state are not seen in a hostile, model of relationships. Unlike, for example, French or Turkish model before, Turkish model during the Ataturk, for example, in which you have a very hostile relationship between state and religions. In Indonesia, state and religions are separated, but they are kind of, mutually working together. We call it hospitable secularisms that gives rooms for religions to be managed and to thrive. And because of that, the state is not only managing Muslims' affairs, the state is also managing other religious affairs as well. So, for example, we have in Indonesia state university, Christian university. We have Hindu college, state college for Hindus, and also for Buddhists. Yeah, and within the Ministry of Religious Affairs, we have directorate that manage certain religions. So, for example, there are directorate or section that manage Christian affairs, that manage Confucian affairs, that manage Buddhist affairs within the Ministry of Religious Affairs. And just to conclude, there are one small interesting thing that normally are considered as a unique by someone who came to Indonesia. If you come to Indonesia, my friend came to Indonesia like 5 years ago, and he was confused initially because in Indonesia, religious holidays is actually more often than national holidays. We have more religious holidays than national holiday. For Muslim, we have 5 national holidays in which all citizens, regardless of their religions, must observe the Muslim holidays. And we have also holidays for Hindus, holiday for Buddhists, holiday for Christians as well, and holidays for Confucians. They give, the state gives even holidays proportionately to the followers of this official religion for Indonesia. Just give you to give you a very small example of how state actually managed to very small micro level of these affairs. I think that's all from my side. Of course, after this, if everybody want to ask questions, is more than welcome. Thank you so much.
there. Okay. So if you still have a question, please. This is Q&A session.
One second, yeah.
Okay. That's good. Okay. Okay, please. We have for about 25 minutes to discuss. Mr. Bekim, please.
Yes.
Mr. Bekim also can speak bahasa.
Yes,
He
saya
will-
pandai bahasa sikit-sikit. Saya belajar di Brunei 8 tahun.
Yeah. Please.
I've just got a quick question.
Yes.
You know, being in Malaysia and Brunei for 9 years, I know a lot of this history that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
In this course, is it included in terms of halal food import from Indonesia? I haven't seen any statistics from any of the courses that I have done in the past. How much food you guys import, especially from countries such as Australia and other countries? Do you have any of that information by any chance?
To be honest, I don't know. That's maybe the Halal Institute. I think you should have the data, no, Pak Sadudin?
Yeah. Sorry.
But
Yeah.
to be honest, me myself, I don't know the data. How many? Because that should be very specific, right?
Mhm.
But normally we know general thing, like for example, normally from Australia we imported like meat, like cows, and also
Beef.
maybe dairy products. Dairy products, very big from Australia and New Zealand. Also meat, of course, that's also traditional. But I don't know, to be honest, in detail. I think Halal Institute must have the data, no?
Or
Yeah.
just, let's say, how much Indonesia depends on the import food products, let's say. That's more a general question, I would say.
Okay.
Because let's say in Australia, pretty much when it comes to dairy and red meat and pretty much all the national produce that we have here, we don't really depend on anyone outside, being a massive country and the environment that we live in. But I don't think Indonesia, Malaysia share the same environment because of the weather and all that. I think you depend on other countries for red meat and dairy products.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think I don't know the data, but we cannot sustain by ourselves for dairy product and red meat. We cannot sustain for example, soybean. It's very weird that we eat. Actually, Indonesia is the biggest country that consume soybean because we eat tempe. Our traditional food is made of the soybean, but yet we cannot sustain ourselves, and we still imported a lot of soybean from the US, for example.
Well, my favorite is nasi rendang is my favorite Indonesian dish anyway.
Yeah,
so.
that is red meat. But that's for sure. We do not sustain for red meat, and I believe the biggest exporter at the moment still are Australia and New Zealand, probably.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Please, Mr. Same, if you want to ask, please, Mr. Same.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Or maybe someone from other country, like. As I said, of course, the sessions that I share to you today is very broad and very general, because that was designed to be foundations. for those who are not familiar with Indonesian history and basic Indonesians, knowledge of Indonesia, I assume some of you are not familiar with Indonesia because you never been to Indonesia or you never been to the regions. That's why this very general overview is needed, I think, for everybody.
No, even because I also do studies about Islam in Australia, the history of Islam. So the first Muslims that arrived in Australia are actually from Indonesia. The Macassans
the
that
Makassar,
came
the
here.
Bugis.
Yes, came in the 16th century.
Yes.
Even though there are no more here since then, but they left some traces, some graves and some carvings in the graves in the Northern Territory. So even for Islam in Australia, Indonesia plays a very important role for Muslim community here in Australia.
Yeah. I believe there are still some festivals, traditional festival connecting people in northern part of Australia and the southern part of Indonesia. Every year they have kind of boat festival or something. And one of a joke that normally I was trained in Australia, by the way. I was in Melbourne for 2 years for my master. I know when I was in Melbourne, there are joke actually in English. If you want to scare people, you normally call, watch out, there are boogeymen coming, right? The boogeyman. So boogeyman is from Bugis, and Bugis is very famous sailors from Makassar, right? From Sulawesi that normally travel all around the world as a trader, but also as a pirate.
Yeah, we adapted some of those words from Indonesian language. But yeah, if you go north, let's say even Queensland or Northern Territory, some of the influence of Indonesia, you can actually sense it there in terms of food and even some fruits like durian,
Oh,
so
you have durian there?
I'm a durian eater, so sometimes in Melbourne I can find it here, but it's pretty much like $20 a kilo of but I buy it, I have to eat it outside though, because my wife and my kids they can't stand the smell, so I still have those memories of me being a student in those countries.
So you studied in Malaysia or you work in Malaysia and Brunei?
No, I studied in Brunei mainly.
I see.
So I did all my studies, my degree, master's and PhD in different universities there. But I had a lot of professors from Indonesia as well and Malaysia.
Yeah.
So yes, I spent most of my youth from 18 years of age till almost 28, 29 in those countries. Yeah.
So basically, I'm now working also in the Indonesian International Islamic University. This is the first international Islamic university based in Jakarta that was taught in English and Arabic fully. So because we think that we don't have international university, most foreigner came to Malaysia because Malaysia teach in English. We normally teach only in Bahasa Indonesia. So yeah, we decided to establish this international university in 2021. It's very new.
But one thing I never understood when I was in Brunei, so all the Indonesian movies and documentaries were actually translated into Brunei Bahasa with a subtitle. Must be maybe a bit different in terms of dialects and accents.
Yeah, you're right. Because as I said, despite the fact that we are share the same languages, because Bahasa Indonesia, Brunei and Malaysia are rooted in Malay, but yet actually after more than 50 years, Bahasa Indonesia, Malaysia and Brunei diverge, into different directions. Indonesian language influenced heavily by the Dutch language, Dutch words, while while English and local Malay are still very much preserved in Brunei and Malaysia.
In Malaysia,
so that's, I think, explain to you why, despite the fact that we speak the same language, yet you need some translations.
Yeah, and the scariest movies that I have seen is from you guys, Indonesia. It's all about magic and these jinns and so
Yeah. Yeah, please, if someone else want to ask questions, anything about Indonesia in general, it's not about history, about culture, please.
Yeah, we still have 14 minutes, so we still have time to Q&A.
So the participant is from 30 countries. Sorry, from 6 countries. It is
I think 12
12
countries.
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 Interesting. Because it's managed by, it's not by individual countries at the moment, Pak Sa'adudin. So,
Yeah, it's part of World Halal Trust.
Okay.
Yeah, World Halal Trust.
Okay.
Mm.
World
So
Halal Trust, yeah.
yeah. So maybe Mr. Zazet can give a little bit explanation about denomination in Indonesia. Why Shafi'i? Why it's important to understand Shafi'i?
Yeah, so
Because
basically, I think it's not only in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, predominantly Shafi'i, like in Malaysia, in Brunei, in Indonesia, mostly are Shafi'i jurisprudence. Of course, historically speaking, the reason why our regions is become the Shafi'i is debatable, but one of the explanation is because actually the Hadramaut from the Hadramaut came to, and also from the network of scholars that come directly from Mecca. Most of these early Muslim scholars that came that visited Mecca actually studied to Shafi'i cleric and Shafi'i scholars, and then when returned to Indonesia, they become religious leaders. They establish a religious organization, and through this organization, then Shafi'i spread out to the archipelago, yeah, as a dominant denomination, the al-mazhab. But nevertheless, we have to also remember, actually in Indonesia we have other also mazhab, yeah. Some organizations are actually influenced by other mazhab. For example, there are 1 or 2 organizations that are heavily influenced by Hanbali school of jurisprudence. We have also actually minority Shiite community here in Indonesia. In Indonesia, we have Ahlul Bayt, we have some Shiite community. We have also Ahmadi, both Qadian and Lahore. In Indonesia, of course, it's always controversial, it's always debatable, about the Ahmadi. But again, as a matter of fact, the dominant religious Islamic jurisprudence are the Shafi'i, and it may also influence the way halal certification was actually established by the government. It may completely Shafi'i, but it's predominantly Shafi'i. Why I said it's not completely Shafi'i? Well, because in the context of modern nation state, let's say for example in the marriage law of Indonesia, despite the fact that we are Shafi'i, if you go to Indonesian marriage regulations that was laid out in KHI or the compilations of hukum of Islamic law in Indonesia, actually some element from other mazhab, like from the Maliki and from the Hanafi, was taken pragmatically because maybe this is more relevant for modern nation context. But that should not be seen as the major, what we call major influence. It is minor influence. I believe that's also the case for halal, for the halal, related affairs, yeah, or halal related arrangement administrations. It may take some element from other mazahib, but it's mostly our Shafi'i based jurisprudence. When I was in Melbourne, I have a very good friend from Pakistan and certain part of what to call it, India, some Indians. Actually, I was surprised when I eat crab. My friend told me that no, Zazen, crab is haram. Crab is haram. Crab is not allowed in Islam. I said,
Yeah, that's Hanafi
that's
stand.
Hanafi, right? I said, no, it's halal. No, it's haram. It's halal, it's haram. I said, look, it's halal according to Shafi'i, but it's haram according to Hanafi. I am Indonesian,
Even-
so I eat crab all the time. We eat
Look,
shrimp
I-
all the time. But for Pakistani student, they will, it's haram, it's haram.
I am Hanafi a
Are you
scholar,
really?
but I love seafood, so I digress from Hanafi, when it comes to seafood. But
So you,
even within Hanafi, there is a dispute among scholars in
yes,
terms
you're
of
right.
seafood.
Yeah.
The argument is not very strong that
Yeah.
prohibits seafood.
Seafood, yeah.
But what I can say here, especially when it comes to Shafi and school, you see, like Saudi, for instance, in terms of halal, they adapt more Maliki school of thought than Hanbali.
That Hanbali, yeah.
So most of their halal standards are derived from Maliki school of
Yeah.
thought. But for us that live in a non-Muslim country such as Australia, it's a bit hard to combine the standards, especially Indonesian and Saudi standards, because sometimes they clash with each other.
Yes.
Especially with with certain insects, let's say colors and all that. In certain standards they're halal, in others they are not.
Yeah.
Especially for CBs that send the same product to both countries. Sometimes it's hard for us to see which standard to follow now, because in some countries it's not halal, or in the others it is. So what we do here as imams and religious leaders, especially for the local community, we try to combine all the standards together that derive from 4 school of thoughts.
Yes.
Just to make life easy for
Yeah.
Muslim community that lives in this country.
Yeah, you're right. As I said, we have to really understand now Islam as an ummah and Islam as a nation state, because law is not only dictated by your let's say mazhab considerations, but maybe there are other elements that may be used for the considerations. I said in the context of marriage law in Indonesia, they take other mazahib. If you go to Egypt, for example, despite the fact that the predominant Egyptians are Shafi'i, the law itself is not Shafi'i. It's mostly Maliki, for example, because of the Ottoman influence.
Especially in marriage and divorce, Hanafi is is very strong in this aspect. That's why it was adapted, some of it by you guys in Indonesia as well.
Yes, you're right. So that's why I think it's important to understand a little bit about the historical aspect, because at the end of the day, we are all Muslims, but we have to really adjust with these small diversity things.
And look, and there's nothing wrong, because what we call in Arabic asabiyya, like to stick to one madhab and thinking that other madhabs are wrong, and only that one is right, that is also not correct. So having 4 madhabs is actually a blessing in Islam.
Yes.
We from Europe, majority of us that are here today, we adapted Hanafi school of thought.
Yes.
Because for us non-Arab Muslims that live in Europe and in these countries, it's a lot easier to follow that than any other madhab.
You're right.
Pakistan and Afghanistan and all those regions. But yeah, it's amazing. Alhamdulillah, this is the blessing of Islam. We come from different countries, different backgrounds, but Islam is the one that unites us and makes us brothers. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, the diversity is in itself is DNA of Islam. Within Islam, diversity is part of it, because we don't have what we call papacy, in which you have a common one interpretations, one channel to God. We have everyone has the right to interpret the corpus, interpret the Quran and Sunnah, of course with knowledge, with proper understanding, proper training. But because of this principle, we end up having during the classical period more than 124 schools of jurisprudence. The evolutions lead us to 4 Sunni and 4 Shi'i jurisprudence. As you said, this is the blessing for Ummah instead of a source of frictions, right?
That's correct. Terima kasih banyak.
Sama-sama, Bapak. Terima kasih. Next time, please come to Jakarta.
Will do. And next time you're in Melbourne, because we are based in Melbourne. Which mosque did you pray when you were in Melbourne?
Normally, I used to live in Coburg, area, Coburg. You know, Coburg.
I was imam of the Carlton Mosque. You know,
Yeah,
Carlton
yeah,
North.
okay.
So that's the Albanian, the oldest mosque in Melbourne, and I was imam for 10 years there.
Wow, alhamdulillah.
So if you ever prayed there, you must have seen me there deliver my talks.
But I was in Melbourne long time ago. I was in Melbourne 2008 and 2009 for my master's
there,
degree.
but prayed in different mosques. So alhamdulillah, we have plenty of mosques now.
Yeah,
that is a blessing as well. But may Allah reward you for your effort and all the information in regards to Islam in Indonesia.
Yeah, I hope it gives some small information and benefit for everyone as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Zazen. So we still have 3 minutes left. So you please give some closing statement before we close this class.
Okay, thank you so much, Pak for Halal Institute and Pak Sabilur Rasad and everyone. So basically, my statement will be that, as everybody know, we are a Muslim Ummah. We are one religion, tied with one religions, one belief. But nevertheless, now we are living in very diverse contexts. We are living in diverse nationalities and ethnicities, and because of that, especially for if we are going to have some businesses, if we are going to deal with other brothers from other Muslim world, despite the fact that all of our Muslim, we have to really understand the context where this Muslim come from, when this certain regulation come from, when this certain policy come from, and because of that, inshallah, what we have been discussed at least gives a foundational understanding, highlight that may be beneficial for your business, for your affairs, for your interactions with Indonesians regulatory administrations. Again, thank you so much for your invitation to the Halal Institute, and thank you so much for everyone for listening to me, and my apology if there are many mistakes coming from me. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very